Children, they say, are gifts from God. While some have struggled for so many years to have just one, some others find it quite easier. Either way, when they come, early or late, the joy they bring into the home is undeniable.
Divine started growing up as a child, very beautiful and a wonderful child. When I gave birth to her, there was no complication. I delivered her normally. We came back home. When she was a year and 6 months old, I enrolled her in school, which she started going to school. There was no problem until she was 4 years.
We discovered my wife got pregnant around me, and for 9 months everything was been good and fine, and we had a very bouncing baby boy. That was 13th of February 2016. The boy was a blessing to the family, and the boy was cute and very promising.
But then, it all changes. That unexpected news comes and snatches, without any prior notice, the joy you thought you had. And before you know it, you are an actor in your worst nightmare.
So part of the hardest job of being a doctor is having to break the news of cancer or having to break the news of death. If you are not careful, the people you are breaking the news to can strangulate you. So you also want to be careful and protect yourself. It's usually an emotional time, and even in breaking the news, many of us have broken down and crying with the patient because it's usually very emotional, especially when there are also some little experiences and emotions attached to it. Maybe you hear, oh, he's the only child, or is the only son, or is the only daughter, and so many of those things, and it can be very, very traumatic for the doctors, for the caregivers who are breaking the news, and for the patient.
I used to notice that when I strap out my back, she and I try to spread her legs to, make her balance at my back. She always cry for that her legs are paining her, that she won't want to spread them, but she wants to put them behind me and stretch them out at my back. And that is not the normal way to actually back a child. So I would force her to open her legs, and then when she cries too much, I will bring her down. I have to carry her on my hand. And when I carry her on my hand as well, if there's any need for her legs to be open, she's not always comfortable. So I never suspected that as anything. And then sometimes when I carry her for some while and I try to bring her down, she finds it difficult to stand. Her legs will be paining her, her feet. So she will tell me to carry her, and I will insist that she should stand. And then her dad and I will be wondering what could be causing the pain on her legs. Maybe she must have kicked it somewhere. Then we'll ask her older brother, because they play together, is there any time she kicked her leg somewhere? Did he hit her anything on her leg? And he will say no. And then we'll forget about it. Sometimes the pain will go and she will not exhibit any form of pain on her leg again. So we never, took it very serious to actually take her to the hospital for that. We just felt it was just maybe sometimes maybe her bones are paining her, or she must have had an injury which she cannot explain, and maybe the brother is not aware of, so we overlook it.
One fateful afternoon, I started seeing blood coming out from her nose. I even thought it was just maybe where she was playing her peers, maybe they hit her or maybe she fell or something. I did not even take it serious. But I said, okay, let me just take her to one pharmacy very close to our house. When I took her there, I explained it to the woman. She said maybe mistakenly one of her friends hit her or something. I told her I have asked her several. She said nobody hit her, whether in the school or even at home. She gave us some drugs that she go and use for that this bleeding is going to stop. We used it. The blood did not stop. Later, I have to take her to another pharmacy, a matron that owns the pharmacy. I went to her, I explained it to her. I said, look, oh, I don't know why this blood is coming out from her nose, and I've used some antibiotics for her, and still the blood is still coming out from her nose. She said it's an infection, that I need to use a powerful antibiotics for this infection for the bleeding to stop. She prescribed some antibiotics also for us to buy, and the name of it was Zenat. One of it was Zenat, which we used for her. For that moment, the bleeding stopped for some days. Later, it started coming out again. I have to take her back to her. When we now got there, I told her that this thing stopped for some days, but now the bleeding has started coming out again. I don't know what I'm going to do or what else to use for her. She now said, no problem, that what I'm going to do is I should take her to a general hospital for them to do some tests and check what exactly is bringing out the blood.
We discovered whenever we are at home, when there was no light, if there is no light on something, we just saw a glittering, shining particles in his eyes, just come and go and all that. Being observant, I took the baby for medical diagnosis to check what actually was wrong with it. And then, so fortunately, we were told that they was having retinoblastoma. That simply means cancer of the eye. Though we were told for one eye, the family were shocked.
The doctor did test for her. The white blood cells were very high. They were extremely high, so that her body is fighting infection. So they placed her on another 1 week of injection. So every day I take her to the clinic to take injection, coupled with change of antibiotics as well. So after that 1 week of the injection, she completed the injection. She was better again. The stooling stopped, the vomiting stopped, her appetite came back to normal. She was eating.
By this time I'm speaking now, the bleeding came out with swollen on her right jaw. On this day, I told my husband, I explained everything to her. We took her to a general hospital at Ikorodu. When we got there, the doctor we met on that day told us that we should take her to a teaching hospital. That we should take her to a teaching hospital. So we came back home from the general hospital that very day because there was no much on us to take her direct to the teaching hospital. So we had to arrange for another day to take her to a teaching hospital. All this time I'm saying the bleeding was still coming out, and the swelling was just coming up every day. So we now took her to a teaching hospital. When we got there on that day, we were asked to do some scan on her, even CT scan. But because the CT was very expensive for us, we could not do it that very day. We only do some minor scan that we asked that we can afford. So we asked to come back for the result.
I remember when my wife called me. It was my wife that took him to the hospital for check-in to confirm the diagnosis. I was told I was at Lekki. Till I rushed down home, my mind was not stable. But we have to someone call, okay? Trying to see what are the medical history of the case and what are the solutions surrounding this and how we can go around it. I saw there are chances of survival on the early detection, and then we early discover it. It gave us more hope that we can still have our child without any, because I know what is the load on what tumor and the cancerous growth could cause and the damage it could result to.
Then after a week again, she was stooling again. So by this time we were very, very scared. We had to go to take her to a government hospital so that we could see children specialists that will really ascertain, maybe do the right test to really know what is wrong. So we took her to the government hospital. When we got there, the first thing they did was another test for her. And by that time, they told us her blood was very, very low. And she needed a blood transfusion. And I was surprised and I was shocked. What would require her to be having a blood transfusion? Not like she had an accident, not like she lost blood. So they said from her full blood count, her blood was very low and it was risky for her to be treated on any treatment at all without her being transfused of blood. They also said that her white blood cells were still very high. So we allowed them, paid for the blood, they transfused her the blood, and then they placed her on antibiotic again. And then from that point, she started having temperature, which was not there before. And then we spent 2 weeks in the hospital. After the stooling had stopped, the white blood cell came down a bit. Then it was now the temperature. The doctors were trying to find out why is the temperature still very high. It comes on when they give her paracetamol, it will go down. They gave us several antibiotics that I can't remember their names. And eventually, when we had been there for 2 weeks, the doctors had to refer us that they cannot really tell why the temperature is still very high and the white blood cell is not coming down the way it should. So they gave us a referral letter and they referred us to another children's hospital that is in the island. So we went.
When we got home that day, we came back from the hospital that very day. We went back there again, that the same teaching hospital. This time they were asked to do some some that they are going to take out tissue from the jaw and run some other tests to know more what is happening. So they took her to the theater, took out the tissue from her jaw and took it to the lab. We asked to go back home, that will come back for the results in the next 1 week. We came back home, brought her home. Even the operation they did for her by bringing out the tissue that day, that child really felt the pain, because when we came back home, she could not sleep, she could not eat. I was just carrying her, a 4-year-old, me backing her everywhere.
Then the next day, some group of specialists came to review her and examine her. So when they came, they checked her, they did all their examination, and they told me that they fear it might be cancer. They said things about lymph nodes, swollen lymph nodes, and some words that I can't really understand their meaning and what they call it medically. So they now referred us to Lutz. They said they didn't have the equipment that they will use to do the test to ascertain if it's actually cancer. So at that point, I was very scared. I told them it can never be cancer. Because the little I know of cancer is that whoever has it never makes it alive. And they said it could be blood cancer, which is leukemia. So I kept praying. I said, God, it can't be. I was hopeful that when we get to Lutz, that they will tell us something different. So the next morning we were discharged and given another referral letter to Lutz. So when we got to Lutz, another test also was carried out, and the result came out to be leukemia, as suspected by the other hospital. And then I broke down.
When we got back to the hospital after that 1 week, we got there. They said the result was not ready, that we should come back again in another week, making 2 weeks. We went back again after that 2 weeks. At that time, they finally told us that there in that department where we did the test, they did not really tell us what really is the thing. They just told us that it's not something they can handle, that they are still going to refer us to another ward that is going to handle our case. That after some drugs and injection, that the swollen and the bleeding will stop.
Whether Burkitt's lymphoma, as was the case of Divine, or retinoblastoma, as was the case of Zoe, or leukemia, as in the case of Eliana, none of these families could in any way be prepared for what lay ahead.